Imagine a place where healing begins. Welcome to Hidden Oaks, our serene 46-acre off-the-grid ranch, dedicated to guiding you on your path to recovery from addiction and past traumas. Here, surrounded by the tranquility of nature, we offer a safe space for renewal and growth. At Hidden Oaks, we understand that the journey to recovery can be challenging. That's why our compassionate team is here to support you every step of the way, providing personalized treatment programs tailored to your unique needs. Take the first step towards reclaiming your life today. Call us at 972-932-2033 or visit our website at resolutionshealthcare.com to learn more. Remember, the path to recovery runs through Hidden Oaks. Let us help you find your way. Is Alan Hyde, and tonight we are joined by a local psychologist, Dr. Reshaunda Strickland. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. The honor's all ours. And we've had your business partner on the show before.
Yes, yeah. I know. She told me all about it. Well, mostly about it. But I'm excited to be able to be a part of all of this myself. So, yeah, this is an opportunity that I think is great for our business to be able to expose and, just be a part of various things going on. So I'm glad you invited me out as well.
Well, your willingness to do it, that's what I'm finding as I'm reaching out to clinicians, is like the willingness to come and be a part of this is wonderful, and just it's exciting to get to know you and your guys' backgrounds. And
in private practice we don't get to like mix a lot. So
I was talking with a buddy about that yesterday of like I work from home because I do a lot of virtual work these days, and like sometimes it can feel like you're on an island.
Absolutely.
Is it just over at Balance Beacon? So we'll have this information for you guys as we go, and we'll have Dr. Strickland tell you all about it. But over at Balance Beacon, is it just the two of you, Dr. Jones-Hines and yourself?
No, we actually have 3 additional clinicians besides myself and Dr. Jones-Hines. We have one that we're in the works with trying to bring on a 4th, but as of right now, it is 5 of us at the office, plus our beautiful office manager that helps run the ship behind the scenes. Yeah,
no, I know how that goes. You saw the team back here. I mean, teamwork makes the dream work.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you cannot beat having a solid team. It's absolutely necessary. But, we're just a small, little, tight-knit group. Most of us at the office have known each other for quite some time. So it really is I hate to say family because I've never liked to say, well, we're like a family, but we do really have a cohesive environment. So growing that has been something we've held near and dear to our heart because we've always been just, us little tight unit. But we're ready to expand beyond, just mental health. We've started incorporating some wellness opportunities and services at our office. We've introduced massage therapy and chiropractic services. Now that was the most brand new one, so that one just started this week.
So kind of more along the lines of like a med spa kind of situation eventually.
Absolutely. One of our goals is to be, I hate to say one-stop shop, but we want to be able to take care of mind, body, and soul for most people that come into our office. So we've been doing therapy there for many years at this point. So we got the mind part. Now we're adding on the body and the rest of it.
Yeah. I want to hear about your background and how you're approaching helping individuals with the mind and what kind of drew you in. So maybe if we drill down for a moment, what pulled you into the field of psychology?
So when I was in undergrad, I actually was going pre-med, and I was hemming and hawing on it if I wanted to stay there. And I had a psychology class from one of my professors, and she was so passionate about the field that I ended up taking a second class from her because, the amount of information and energy that she put into her classes really kind of solidified, like, okay, maybe there's something here that I might need to explore. So I took a second class, and I was hooked after that. So my first one was kind of just a general intro, but then my second class was kind of similar to maybe like an abnormal psychology where you dove into diagnoses and learning a little bit more about that kind of stuff. So I changed majors, and it's been, I mean, history since then. I started grad school, and from there, I wasn't sure what I wanted to specialize in, so I went more clinical route. But over the years, I found that I have a real passion for developmental disabilities. I've done my internship and part of my postdoctoral fellowship working with individuals that have autism spectrum, intellectual disabilities. So that's some of the stuff that I do on the side currently because it's such a passion area for me. And then, of course, my specialties evolved over the years, but it really started off with just that one class.
Yeah.
That wasn't my plan, but it became my plan.
Sure. Yeah, it's amazing how this field just kind of draws you in when you have a proclivity for people too, and then you find this information, and just, you know, as you were explaining the clients you like to work with, it's like you were saying, I have this practice, but I do this on the side, and it's what happens to us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's not something that I don't think I would ever give up, because you know, I could soapbox all day about services for adults that have special needs because it's such an underfunded, valued area of the field. So if I can put my, you know, little bit of expertise in, my little bit of care, concern, and passion, then I'm definitely going to do that.
Is that what, over at Balance Beacon, is that what you're treating?
No, so that's not my primary thing at Balance Beacon. So I mostly, at our office, work with adult level 1 individuals on the spectrum. So I do take that clientele. But primarily, I work with personality disorders.
Oh,
so
you are brave.
Yes,
Dr.
I love, if it's wild, I love it. So anything, you know, narcissism, antisocial, borderline, those are kind of like my bread and butter. And I also love working with men. So I probably have the largest population of male clientele at our office. So like I said, over the years I've learned that. I didn't start out that way, but I think I finally have found a niche that really works for me, my personality, as well as my treatment approach.
Yeah. I would imagine, and I'll leave it open too, but I would imagine it's a lot of dialectical behavior therapy with them. And
yes.
You and I know about that, but I'm curious if you could kind of dive into just when you are approaching, because that's a buzz topic, right? Narcissism, but being able to sit down with someone who has the expertise, maybe the individuals listening tonight could glean some information if they feel like they might have someone like that in their life, and how a clinician is helping those individuals.
Absolutely. So I will say that most individuals that I see that have narcissistic tendencies are usually there as a ultimatum or request that someone else has placed on them. So I don't typically see these individuals just, you know, straight off the street themselves. However, you know, one of the things that I look for when working with somebody with any personality disorder is level of functioning, interference with, you know, daily functioning, occupational, social, mental, spiritual, financial, legal, all of those things. So then from there, really what we do is we talk about, okay, so what have been the impacts in your life? And then we start building the treatment plan from there on. Okay, so if it's been a social issue, okay, so like one of my, I don't want to go too deep into.
It's all good. We can go wherever you want, but I appreciate that.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute, let me hold back. So as far as like level of functioning, so we look at cognitive restructuring or changing thought processes, how they communicate, learning, empathy, emotional language. That seems to be one of the big things that I see is there's not a well-developed set of emotional words to be able to communicate what's really going on, what I'm really thinking. So we kind of build the structure so that that individual can really start communicating the things that are really bothering them in a healthier way versus responding with behavior.
Yeah. Which on that note, because I want to pause on this one because I thought it was brilliant. For those watching, what just happened between Dr. Strickland and I was a protection of anonymity for the clients that we work with. And on this platform and growing this network, it's been such a blast to see just like the local clinicians and how they honor this profession.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
wanted to make sure just with you here that I paid that compliment, because it's, there's certain places we can go in the conversations, but watching you monitor that and then highlighting it for those who are listening, these are the important pieces of, like, when you're watching this information on social media, this is the kind of stuff you want to see. It's like, then when you click on her website, when we click on your website, that you're going to be working with a clinician who honors and respects you. And it just was
Absolutely.
nice.
Well, thank you.
And so as you were kind of tying in, talking about like helping individuals find their way to behaviors like that, it's such an amazing kind of process that we get to model for people as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of modeling, especially when you're working with individuals with personality issues. There's a lot of boundary setting from myself with them, as well as, like you said, modeling healthy dynamics, problem solving. Because sometimes the sessions can become heated because you're dealing with a person that, has a certain way of viewing the world, and you're challenging that view that they've built over a certain number of years. And so I have to be able to demonstrate, okay, I can speak calmly, I can speak respectfully, I can engage with you, I can help walk you through that. Let's, bring some of the energy down. So it really is a necessary skill to demonstrate as well as teach at the same time.
Yeah. There's so many like routes I want to go with you right now, but so, if we have to reel each other in, we will. But the boundary setting in those moments internally for us, I learned a long time ago, say what you mean, but don't say it mean. And that'll go a long way in your clinical practice.
Absolutely.
And, but also obviously in our personal lives.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. Sometimes it is difficult because we are human too. And sometimes some things can be said when you're dealing with stronger personalities. And I have a strong personality as well. So I do have to monitor to make sure that I'm not, transferring my own stuff back onto the client. Like, okay, no, that's my issue. That has nothing to do with them. So it can be difficult, but it isn't necessary if you're going to make any type of progress in that type of dynamic.
Are you with, let's say, like cluster B personality disorders, which, typically the big ones you're going to hear like on social media are like borderline narcissistic, there's, obviously like histrionic and stuff, but those are the big two you're going to hear. Right. But my question for you is, are you doing long-term work with these individuals? Do you do more? Yeah.
Yes. I don't have too many short-term clients. If I do, they're mostly work-related stress or anxiety, but for the most part, most of mine are long-term. They're either trauma or personality disorders. And
so they obviously, on your caseload, they've gotten to a point where, although they were recommended to come in, they decided to stay.
Yes. So one of the things that I usually start off with is, I'm okay if you came here because of an ultimatum. We can start there, but that's not going to keep you here. So eventually the motivation will have to become internal in order for us to really make some progress and do the work. If you're only here because of somebody else, eventually you'll either tire of this work, it'll frustrate you, you'll be bored of it, and you'll leave the whole process. And I don't want that. So once it becomes an internal thing, then we can really hit the ground running. Yeah. But I know it's okay if you came in the door that way.
Yeah. How long would you say before you start to see that they're connecting with that, when they do, that they're connecting with that internal motivation?
So I would say usually within the first month or two. In my intakes, I tell my clients, give me at least 3 sessions to really get a feel for what's going on, because I need to learn your whole life in an hour. So that's not going to be possible just in this one session. So give me several sessions to kind of get a feel for who the major players are in your life, how they impacted you, what intersections are there with you in adulthood versus your childhood. So once you've given me some time to really understand you, then we can start implementing skills, strategy, and hit the ground running with some technique. So usually by a month or two, we're really, we're rocking and rolling, ready to go.
Yeah. And you said work with men. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is always a fun question, do you ever get on your caseload, since you're privy to working with personality disorders, the flip, right? So we have the obvious where, like, when you hear narcissism, you think men, when you hear borderline, you think women, but do you work with the flip? side of both?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I would say not as many borderline men. They do occasionally come through, but not as frequently. But yes, I do work with quite a few women that have narcissistic tendencies. They may not be full-blown diagnosis, but do have a lot of traits that would be atypical.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make too, because I think that's a lot of education sometimes in clinical settings of like you may meet certain symptomology and like you were touching on of like we're getting to know all the major players and where you might have learned some of that symptomology and seeing if some of those things will calm down as well. And I always find that really fascinating. On this one, are there any, this is maybe even something that I could take with me, is like identifiable differences between the presentations that you consistently see between the male narcissist and the female narcissist?
So with the female, I tend to see more lash out, guilt tripping type of behavior. I see that less with men. Men, it's more traditional manipulation and gaslighting, and less lashing out and more clever, cunning, working around you type of behavior, and less of the in your face, like I said, guilt tripping type of situations.
And this one's such a broad question because there's about a trillion answers, but just your conceptualization as you and I just chatting, what do you feel like you've seen, if you were going to write some stuff down on it, are like the major players as far as causes that are causing these personality disorders to manifest?
So one, a lot is growing up in a household that has these types of dynamics in them. So if you have two parents that one is, again, maybe not full-blown diagnosable, but has a lot of narcissistic traits where there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of blame shifting, or moving the goalpost on goals in your household, and you watched a lot of those dynamics, then you're naturally going to pick those up. So that would be one. Trauma and learning how to self-soothe and protect the self. Sometimes as a child, the way we learn how to do that morphs into something unhealthy in adulthood. But those would be the major two players. And of course, occasionally some people are born with certain proclivities and view the world in certain ways. But in my experience, most of the individuals that I come across, it's more learned behavior from their home environment.
Yeah. Which, you know, it's within the environments where we cut our teeth, it's kind of like people will say, like, man, these are some of the hardest things to treat, but they're very treatable.
Oh, yes.
Very treatable. And I'm curious, you know, just for our viewers who, you know, week in and week out love this information, is like, speaking to the hope, because I'm sure you see a lot of the changed behaviors working with personality disorders, especially hearing you talk about like sticking in there with them.
Yes.
And I'm just curious if you could put some words to the hope around that.
Absolutely. Well, this is one of the reasons that I do long term and I don't go for the short term. And I make that very clear in that I'm a patient therapist. So while I am a pretty direct therapist, I am patient, and we will go on this journey together. So I think when you start to see the person come in and say, oh, guess what I did this week? And then some situation and how they either handled it differently or how they were proud of themselves for, not yelling or not stomping off, that they were able to use their words. I think when I can highlight, so we've been talking for X number of weeks or a number of months. Let's check in and see what's gone well. And being able to give them those kind of motivating stepping stones to get to the next point, I think has been really helpful in keeping clients on track and motivated to keep going. So I always tell them I take a bird's eye view. So while you're in the trees, so sometimes it's hard to see what's going on, but I kind of soar above and I look and see, okay, and then I'll fly back down and say, hey, let me bring you up here so you can see all of the things that have been happening around you. So I try to do that periodically so that the motivation keeps going.
Yeah. Here's where you started. Look how far you've come. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was talking in a different light, right, around the concept of anxiety today. And it's interesting kind of on the flip where you're really trying to slow them down to the benchmarks, right? Because they want so many of them.
Yes.
It's fascinating, the simplicity of like what works, but like the different ways we have to get like artistic with it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I tend to speak in a lot of visuals because it works really well for me. So that way I can explain where you are, what's going on in real world terms. Because sometimes I've heard some clients over the years say that they've heard a lot of jargon and technical terms and are not really sure what a lot of those things mean. So just taking that information over the years, I like to explain stuff to clients in a way that is, okay, so this is what this means in a real world setting. Here's an example of what, living in the past or looking to the past looks like, or like I said, with the bird's eye view kind of example.
Yeah. Can I put you on the spot and ask for a Dr. Stricklandism?
Sure.
Let's. Do you want a random one, or do you want to go with one that you use often?
That's a good question.
Because I could ask you for
one.
one.
You really would put me on the spot.
I could. I'll back off if you want to just share one that you have.
Sure. So one that I talk about is sometimes I have clients that say, I don't know why I make the decisions that I do. I feel like I'm stuck in the past. So I usually use. So we drive in a car. We have a rear view mirror that is this big. We have a windshield that is this big. And that is because when you look in your rearview mirror, you cannot drive looking to the past. So you have this little mirror just for you to glance at so that you can see where you've been. But you have this wide windshield so that you can continuously see where you are going. You look to the future, but you drive in the present. So you also have to live in the present, glance to the past, but look to the future.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And being in the present. I mean, I think we've been chatting a little bit about, obviously personality disorders, but I think that's the challenge for any of our clients who come to us in pain, and, definitely the people who've reached out here for hope on this show. It's like when we're in pain, the hardest thing to do is to look out that windshield and know that I'm sitting in the driver's seat still.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It can be really difficult because there's always so many different things coming at you at one time. You have work, if you have family, you have your health. There's so many different factors vying for your time, your attention, that need you. So it can be really hard to manage all of that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you managing it on a day-to-day? I'm kidding.
So you want to get real deep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys have, to kind of shift a little bit, you guys have built a beautiful practice over there, and just, having you come on, getting to know you a little bit, and having sat with Dr. Jones-Hines, it's really nice to see that right around the corner is this practice that is steadily growing, which speaks testaments to the work that you guys are doing. And I want to make sure we take a moment here that we get the right URL, because we can put it in our comment section here. Can we? It's balancebeacon.com. There it is. Cool. And then they can just find you right on the About section, right?
Yes. So if you were to go to our website, all you would need to do is go to the staff page, and you'll be able to read the bio of all of the staff members at our office. We try to tell you as much about us as we can so that you can get a good feel for who may be a wonderful fit for you. And then once you contact our office, our practice manager will try her best to make sure that she connects you with the therapist that you believe fits your needs.
Cool. We'll get to, because you shared your bio with me, I want to hear about the nerdy side of you. We'll get to some of that. The levels on the spectrum. So in your private practice, you said you take level 1.
Yes.
For those listening, could you describe just kind of like what the levels mean, what they are, and just kind of a brief, that bird's eye view that you have? Yeah.
So level 1 would be minimal supports. Traditionally, it would have been called high functioning, but now it's called low support need. So these are individuals that work, have pretty full lives, and just have some social deficits, may have some sensory issues, but for the most part live pretty, similar lives to neurotypical individuals. For some, you may have to be really proficient in working with people on the spectrum to even know that they would have that diagnosis, because it can be that Not pervasive. It's like, if there's a word opposite
maybe
of
like
pervasive.
maybe like subtle.
Thank you. Very subtle.
Yeah.
Level 2 would be a moderate support need. So this individual may need supports with financial management, certain types of obligation assistance like appointments, things like that. They may start to need some assistance with daily care, dressing, bathing, cooking, just management of daily life. You may start to see individuals that have more intense sensory issues. So that could be sounds, foods, clothing, even lighting. What else in level 2? You may see more sensory behaviors like self-stimulatory behaviors like rocking, humming, or vocalizations. And then level 3 would be the highest need of support. Many individuals here may be nonverbal, have very intense self-injurious behaviors, are likely going to need lifelong support from various multidisciplinary teams.
Yeah. And with the work you do on the side, do you work with the other higher levels?
I do.
Yeah.
So level 2 and level 3 is just not appropriate for an outpatient setting.
Yeah.
So I do work with level 1 because most of those individuals also do not have intellectual disabilities. With level 2 and level 3, you're going to start seeing more intellectual disabilities, and talk therapy is just not appropriate for those individuals.
Do you think, because I'm always privy to this, like the being on social media and doing some of these things and trying to connect with people in those realms, there's a lot of talk about a lot of different mental health, let's just say like the premise of mental health diagnoses, and autism is a hot topic right now.
It is.
Do you think that some of the shifts in the designations and the terms kind of made it like kind of blow up in the pop culture scene? Do you think that's been an impact? Or I guess I'm just kind of curious as well, because it's definitely much more of an open topic now, which is great.
Absolutely.
And with that, you always see the rocking of the boat. People falling off the sides.
I do think that social media has made it much more readily available to be talked about. It's not just in the DSM for other clinicians to know what the criteria is for these diagnoses. So I think being able to have access to that information has assisted people in being able to look and say, okay, this person said XYZ, I've also done that thing. Whereas 15 years ago, that was not an option. It was just word of mouth, in your small area. So I do think that has helped broaden the understanding of autism and the language. I also think using more inclusive words like low support need versus high support need, instead of high functioning versus low functioning, because the individuals are still functioning. It's just how much support is necessary for those individuals to be able to have a life that is as similarly functional as everyone else. So I would definitely say that the landscape has changed, the wording has changed, but I think for the better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Such is the case, right? I think with like social media, everybody gets up in arms about the terms and being more inclusive and all this stuff. And it's like social media can just be a rabbit hole of people not being very kind to each other. And it's like when you back up and look at it, that's why I like when I have the experts to talk about certain aspects and the ways that they can pop off on social media. Is like, if we hear and glean the information that Dr. Strickland is sharing with us, what I'm hearing is that this is the way in which we make it more accessible for somebody who isn't you, if you don't struggle with this, to get the support in order to interact with us in functional ways that are functional for them and feel good for them and for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think another thing, I've come across other clinicians that really have a dislike for self-diagnosing, but I do believe when you talk about something like spectrum, it is not always possible for a person to go get testing as an adult.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
There are a lot of, which is why I could soapbox all day about adult services. There are a lot of services available to children. We've kind of, it's in this particular area of the field. there are a lot of services available to the treatment for children, to diagnosing children, and that's just not available in adulthood. So some adults, their only option is to self-diagnose, because going to get a neuropsych eval as an adult is pricey, even with your insurance. So it is a prohibitive factor. So if you're able to hear the stories from other individuals or even experts in the field online and hear that criteria, hear what some of the symptomology is, how does that present on a day-to-day basis, it can help you with understanding yourself when you don't have the ability to go get a full battery of testing done.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's, like you were highlighting too, there's a lot of assessments out there where, like, you're going to walk into a professional office, they're only going to do that assessment if you're a kid. If you're an adult, we're going to treat you in a different way.
Absolutely.
Not poorly, we're just, in the sense of the definition, treatment, you're going to get treatment in a different way. And it's kind of that balance, right, with self-diagnosing, where it's like, take in multiple sources.
Yes.
Check in with a therapist once a week and
Yes.
take their feedback as you're opening up to them. And,
Agreed.
And they're seeing your unabashed behaviors,
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I do think that if you are going to self-diagnose, if you can't get an assessment, I would agree. Yes, please still see a therapist so that you can ask questions from somebody that is proficient in working with that population. I think that's also necessary, is working with somebody that is proficient with that population, because we all have specialties. Just because we're all familiar with certain things, that doesn't mean we're all great at everything. So if you are concerned that this may be a diagnosis for you and you just want to enlighten yourself, I say yes, please do. Go meet with somebody, ask questions, have a consultation. Even if it's just a clinical interview and it's not a full battery of tests, you can still have certain questions asked of you that will help you navigate and get closer to the diagnosis.
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful that you highlight that too, because we have clinicians who watch the show, and we have young aspiring clinicians in the back, and this is a really good point. Is like the clients are all the need is there. When you refer somebody out, there's always going to be another client to come in. Don't get wrapped up in, I don't have enough clients, or they're coming. Trust me, you're going to want some time off too.
As long as there are human beings on this planet.
We'll have a job. Yeah.
We'll have a job.
Yeah. So I want to maybe take a little a detour here. So I was real excited just to kind of get more of a sense and to let them get to know you. But you made a point in your bio to talk about kind of some of the nerdier side of your life that you're into. And
yes.
I'm curious if there's anything that just jumps out at you that you love in that realm that you'd want to share, and see if we have a shared nerd.
I am a huge horror fan.
Okay.
So I love any and all things horror, whether it's books, movies, TV shows.
Personality disorders.
I told you, if it's wild, I love it. So if anything, that's like my number one. And I'm also really into like quantum mechanics. So I love stuff about the universe, astrophysics. I know those are two totally different realms.
Who's Tyson, what's the gentleman's
Neil
name?
deGrasse Tyson.
Yes. Yeah, from our childhood.
Yeah,
he blew up.
He did.
He talks about a lot of that stuff.
He does, yeah.
So you're probably real excited for Halloween.
Yes.
Do you dress up and everything?
I do. Last year I dressed up, now I'm dating myself a little bit here, but I dressed up as Rainbow Bright.
Oh, no
last
way.
Year. Yes.
Someone on the show months ago, because there's a question I'll ask you at the end, and their favorite character they identified was Rainbow Bright.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at that.
It was hard to find the theme song for that for the social medias.
I can imagine. That's why I said I'm dating myself here.
Yeah. That's cute though. Yeah. So that's a throwback show that you used to be really into?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Quintessential 80s.
Yeah. Is there a favorite horror movie that's like a go-to for Halloween that you get into?
Well, not a particular movie, but a subgenre. So I am a huge zombie fan. So all zombie-related films, I could sit and just binge watch those. I love October because the channel AMC, it's their whole month is dedicated to horror. So lots of course, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, but primarily, I love zombies.
Yeah. You a big Walking Dead fan?
I was.
Yeah.
I was a huge Walking Dead fan.
Yeah, I don't know what, they kind of fell off that show.
It
Just a
did.
touch,
It
just enough
did.
to let it fall
Yeah,
out.
I think I lasted about 9 seasons, and then after that, I just slowly, the storyline started, it just kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I think I'm done.
Yeah. Quite the juxtaposition. Rainbow Bright, zombies.
I know. Yes.
Did they ever do a mashup of that?
Look, now that would be awesome.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
I might do that this year.
Yeah. So if a client comes to see you, they can look forward to quite the cultured conversation about zombies and
Yes.
AMC horror.
Oh, for
during
sure.
October and
I
Rainbow
love
Bright.
it. I love all of it. I have a few clients that are horror fans, so when they do read that on my my bio, they're like, "Okay, so what kind?" I get similar questions. So what kind of horror films do you watch? What's your favorite movie? And I don't mind disclosing some of those types of things about myself,
Sure.
as long as they don't get too personal. So I love being able to take a break sometimes in the session just to have small chit chat. So it's like, yeah, there's a real person sitting over here that has their
Yeah.
own likes and all that.
Yeah, I think about that sometime from week to week because my clients will ask me about this. They'll watch and then they crack up and make fun of me, and that's fun. But this is quite the self-disclosure to do this kind of stuff, and I think it's important too. I've noticed there's like a very human element to it, like even when I'm working with my clients.
Oh, yeah.
Because they get to see like my goofier kind of like unstructured sides too a little bit more, and we'll see if we can't subject some of your clients to that as well. But it's important.
Absolutely.
The where we self-disclose,
Absolutely, for sure. And I try to be very careful. So when I'm talking to them, I'll say, I don't talk about myself often, but if I do, I try to make sure it's relevant to what you're talking about. I'm not going to come in and say, oh, I had an argument with my husband or anything like that, because that's not what you're here for. You're not here to handle my problems or deal with the things that I'm going through. But I always want my clients to know there's no holier than thou sitting over here, and that I do have my own issues. But if it's relevant to the conversation, I may disclose to a certain level. Because even with that, I'm still only going to go so far.
Yeah. Yeah. My therapist always shares, you're your sharpest tool, keep it sharp, and we're not blank slates. It's not the way the practice works anymore.
Right.
We're not sitting behind just taking notes in silence, waiting for them to blurt
Yes.
obscenities.
Yes.
I mean, I still kind of hope that they'll
Yeah.
blurt out obscenities because I want to laugh while I'm working,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please come as you are.
Yeah.
Bring all of yourself.
Yeah.
And I tell my clients that too. I say, I like to have fun, I sit and I talk to people all day about things that they struggle with. I want to know what's going well in your life. I want to hear the funny stuff too.
Yeah.
But we usually save that to the end because I'm really big about, okay, so you still have a life you have to live when you walk out of my room. You may have to go back to work. You may have to go pick your children up. And I don't want to, open up all of this stuff and then I just leave you raw as you're walking out. So I like to kind of package things back up as we're walking out the door.
Tie-in bows. Maybe some of those Dr. Stricklandisms
Yes.
at the end there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice. One of my favorite concepts, my friends and I, we used to joke about when we were young clinicians and didn't know how to handle it, like in our first couple of years, is the doorknob confessions. Oh, by the way.
Say next week.
Yeah.
Next week.
You go ahead and hold on to that. Yeah.
Yes, I start to have telltale signs as the session is winding down. I've had to learn a lot of behavioral moves to indicate that, okay, we're starting to get towards the end, so please don't add anything else. So, uncrossing my legs and, shifting to the front of my chair. So over the time, my clients have started to recognize, like, oh, okay, she's about to be done.
Yeah. With my virtual clients, my Google Calendars has that ding noise, and I've like strategically kept it on because they're like, oh, okay, we're at the end. Or I'll always wrap in like, okay, I think a good way to wrap this one and plant a seed is, yeah.
So for next week, how about we work, so your homework is.
Yeah, they're like, oh, yeah, we're at the end. Yeah.
Absolutely. You gotta get it in there because if you don't, it's very easy to just keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good lesson too to kind of tie in what you were talking about earlier, working like with personality disorders of like that self-soothing and kind of like self-parenting kind of aspect is we're modeling that too. And the way we're talking about end of sessions is like, I care about you. And I also care about the person who is paid to come in right after you. and I care about myself enough to get a little bit of my notes done, maybe in between, and stretch and get some water. You know, it's like,
All of that.
And if I don't do those things, then I'm not going to care as much next week.
Yes, yes. And for us, I know that for Dr. Jones, Hines, and myself, the added layer for us is, okay, we also got to make sure we go check on our front office and see, does she need support from us? Check on our therapist, you know, and make our rounds. So there's a lot that's trying to happen in 6 or 7 minutes.
Right.
You know, if we have another session that's right behind that one.
Mm-hmm. Do you see clients back to back to back?
I do.
Me too. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm like.
I was ready for the tongue lashing.
No. Even today, because I'm just in that phase right now too of like shifting things around, doing this, where like Fridays is like back to back to back to back, and then I come over here, and it's like we're getting ready to shift some stuff around because
That's a lot.
we're dealing with people, you know, and they need a lot.
Yes, we kind of done the opposite and jam-packed all of our stuff into the beginning of the week so that the end of the week is more administrative type stuff. So it's a tough Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's so funny that you said the tongue lashing, because my therapist is always like, I'll tell her like, oh, I'm finagling to get a day where I don't have any clients. And she's like, well, are you going to work like on other stuff? I'm like, well, you know, and she's like, so it's not a day off. I'm like,
No.
oh, crap.
No, it's just a not seeing client day.
Yeah. Do you do any psychological assessments?
Not currently. I do have a pretty extensive background in doing that. But because I do assessments for inmates more on the side, I don't do them at our office. It would just be too many. It would be like writing a dissertation every other week. So, but I do love doing them. I just don't do them in our office. But Dr. Jones does.
Gotcha. And how many of those are you doing on average? Just to give a picture as well, because I think a lot of, I mean, maybe the reason I'm asking you too is because I'm sure there's people watching where like they want to get those things done, but there's waiting lists for stuff like that. And I'm curious if you could put some words as to why, right, to paint the picture of like how many you realistically could even get done in a time frame.
So realistically, if you are seeing clients as well as doing psychological evaluations, you probably can get in maybe 3 or 4 a month because the volume of information, especially if you're doing a neuropsychological, it's a lot of tests. I mean, these are really big batteries, so the reports can be 20, 30 pages long, and that's a lot to be writing, having 8 or 9 or 10 evals plus seeing a full caseload. Yeah. So realistically, if you're seeing clients and doing psych evals, I would say maybe about 4 a month. If you're just doing psych evals, you probably could get maybe 6 to 7 or even up to 10, depending upon the size of the battery.
Yeah. With the agency that you're doing it with, do you do with your evals where you sit down with them after as well? Yeah. See, that's the time, because you can bring in the professionals, and then it's like, I mean, the amount of psych evals I've sat in on too with a psychologist giving the breakdown, you know, so that we can all go through it.
Yes. It's the clinical interview. It's the interview. It's the testing. And because it's an agency, there's some other factors that kind of go into that. About developing a plan for that individual, whether that plan needs to have behavioral interventions or if it's certain programs. So it's not as simple as, okay, I saw you for, you know, a few hours and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like the doctor where he's like, here's your script. See ya.
Oh, I wish. That'd be so nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Slightly different types of doctors out there, you know, but this is, it's important to have you for our viewership, checking in, who may be looking for that need to hear from the clinical perspective. If you're reaching out to somebody, they don't have the time, or they have a long wait list, it's okay to reach out to somebody else. There's only a handful they can get done even in a month. Oh,
yes. It is really hard because if you're doing a full neuropsych eval, you could be with that person just in testing 8 to 10, sometimes 12 hours, just testing. And that doesn't include the scoring of the materials, then the writing of the materials, and interpretation, as well as then coming back to explain the report to whomever the assessment was done for. So it is a pretty involved process.
Yeah. we'll have plenty more time to talk about all kinds of different topics. This one we may not get too much into, but do you see like a increase in types of diagnoses these days that people are seeking, like even like coming to you and getting referrals for evaluations and things like that? Do you see any increases?
Absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt, ADHD. I mean, that would be number one. And then for me specifically, spectrum.
Yeah.
But for our office, ADHD.
Yeah. What's your guys' kind of stance on that? Like when an adult comes in, what's the perspective? Are you referring them right out, or do you take them in, educate them on just kind of your guys' perspectives as well? I guess that's kind of a broad question, but I guess just kind of get to know you better as well.
Yeah, sure. So if someone wants to come in for ADHD testing as an adult, we're not going to turn them away. We have all of the testing materials for adults and for children. So we definitely will welcome anybody that wants to have ADHD testing in adulthood. So we would follow the same process that we would for children. So the interview, we would select the tests that we think are appropriate to determine the diagnosis, administer the testing, write the report, and then explain. And if you do have the diagnosis, here are some treatment options. And at that point, they would decide whether they wanted to do therapy with one of the therapists at our office, or if they need a referral outside. Or we can send a report to their therapist if they already have one.
Yeah, yeah. So if you need that assessment, Balance Beacon,
yes,
they'll help you figure out legitimately whether or not you got it, which is important because I'm not buying that as much as it's talked about online that all these people have ADHD. I'm personally not buying it, but there are legitimate needs for these things. And
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes. You do all of the testing, and it turns out, no, you don't have ADHD. You just have really high levels of anxiety that interfere with your ability to focus and stay on track because you have a lot of intrusive thoughts, or your mind's racing all the time. But it's from an anxious standpoint, not necessarily an inattentive or a lack of ability to focus because of an attentional issue.
Yeah, I work with a lot of 12-steppers, and another one I see other than just the heightened anxieties or the real low depressions.
That too,
is when we can really get into the depth of the assessments around their traumatic histories. It's often a presentation more around symptomology of post-traumatic stress.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And it's interesting, right? Because we can call it, and I tell my clients this in the beginning, it's like, we can call it whatever you want, right? But let's treat it.
Right.
And when we treat, when they find the routes with my niche that they want to work on the trauma and they do that long term, the attention stuff goes away.
Yes, it's amazing. That's something that we try to tell individuals as well. Let's work on this stuff first, and you might find that all of these things that you thought were ADHD just seem to vanish.
Yeah.
Because you hit the core issue.
Yeah.
Of what was really going on.
Yeah, which, it's interesting, right? Because it's like, was it not ADHD, or was there a rewiring in the brain? It's like, you start to get into it. There's really interesting conversations, but whatever it was, at least it worked.
Yes. Because that's what you're looking for at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That it worked.
Yeah. Gabe, how are we doing on time, brother?
We got about 3 minutes.
Cool. I have 2 questions that I ask everybody.
Okay.
I don't know if Dr. Jones-Hines gave you a heads up on this one, but the first one we kind of touched on. Who is your favorite childhood cartoon and why?
My favorite childhood cartoon. That's a good question. Favorite. I would say Strawberry Shortcake.
Oh.
I know, not Rainbow Bright.
That's cute.
Strawberry Shortcake. It would be a tie for that and Care Bears.
Okay.
I was a huge Care Bears fan when I was a little girl. One, because they're very positive. There was never, even though they had adversity, because all, cartoons and, that kind of thing has a formula, but everything was so positive and lively, and there was lots of love and sharing. And I was an only child when I was very young. So it was really good to be able to learn like sharing and, that you can, how to make friends and all of these things. So I would say those were probably my biggest two.
How would strawberry shortcake, we'll go with that one
Okay.
first here. How would they benefit from seeing you in therapy?
That's a good question. Boundaries.
Boundaries.
Because while she's a very positive, very helpful individual, if you overextend yourself to others, then you don't leave anything for yourself.
That's right. Yeah, got to fill your cup first.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
If we were going to build a mental health amusement park
Mm-hmm.
and you got to build a ride there,
Okay.
what would that ride be and what would you call it?
Ooh, what would that ride be? It would be a roller coaster that has a portion where it goes through a dark tunnel and comes out on the light on the other side. And I would call it the breakthrough.
The breakthrough. I love it. Cool. Any last sentiments or things you would share with the audience?
So don't be afraid to seek therapy, and don't be afraid to ask your clinicians questions. I am a huge proponent of it is our responsibility to make sure that you feel educated about your care, and that you find somebody that really works for you. So don't also be afraid that you can shop around if you need to. Now, don't shop too much, but it's okay to shop around, because working with a good quality therapist can really enhance your life in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Reshaunda Strickland, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We break the cycle here every Friday, 7 p.m. We'll see you next week.